Kono Katachi or Silent Voice is a movie that hit me really hard when I first watched it. The people making the film over at Kyoto Animation were really able to bring out the true charm that the original manga had, and I found myself entranced by the tale of a deaf woman and a man. Something about the way the characters talked, the way they were animated, the way anxiety and depression was portrayed, the sheer accuracy in the way the plot was crafted, and how realistic the movie was. In my view, this anime was an attempt to understand people, exploring the imperfections within the human heart, seeing what pushes people off the edge, but also what can make people feel sad, depressed, anxious, and alone. The decade-long story between Shoko and Shoya was an absolutely dazzling way this message was delivered. A narrative about bullying, exclusion, depression, anxiety, and the good and bad that lies inside every single soul. You see, Shoya as a child didn't understand the consequences of his actions very well, and so he would often act in ways that would be considered rude, cruel, and insensitive in an effort to impress his friends or get attention. But you see, Shoko was a deaf girl who had transferred to his elementary school, so Shoya would regularly tease her and bully her, pulling out her hearing aids and throwing her books into a wet pond. But as he grew up in his years and slowly began to mature, he was able to be sensible and moral enough not to do these things. But by then, he had already lost all of his friends. He was in turn teased and bullied for his actions, getting his school books thrown into a wet pond. It started from being kicked out from his friend group to from his whole school until in high school where he was excluding himself from the whole world and all of society to the point where he became suicidal. And at the same time, Shoko would also become the same. She would blame herself for her deafness and that she should be getting bullied. Already, her self-esteem was very low, so when she figured out that someone had lost all of his friends just because of her, it dropped rock bottom until she had thought of killing herself. From the very get-go, this show seems very tragic for both Shoyo and Shoko, and as the minutes go on, this movie begins to shape into a search for human worth and the reality of our nature. But it also turns into a story about two people trying to recuperate from their flaws within them, Shoya's insensitive nature and Shoko's low self-esteem. This was the movie's way of showing that no one is fully perfect or truly deplorable despite how they might look or act on the outside. But instead of just stating that people can be both good and bad, it chooses to take a deeper look into why certain people do commit certain actions and the way some other way they are. The plot of this show seems like a huge culmination of subplots combined into one overarching theme about human nature. It's a subtle human drama with no real specific end goal, but instead it is very ambiguous. Because that is the way life is. It takes unexpected turns at sometimes the most inconvenient times. You don't know how it will end, when it will end, or even if it will end. Because life doesn't plan everything out for you, telling you when to take those baby steps to an ideal ending or not. There is no clear bad or good character within the show, or a certain villain to take down in order to save yourself, your group, or the world. Instead, this movie leaves that up to us to decide. The villains and heroes are based on our judgment, and each other's opinion can vary wildly based on the way that we view certain things in the world. After Shoyo's mother is able to prevent her son from killing herself, he's left there clueless and dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. Because suddenly he's ripped from the obvious path in life that he originally thought he had. And so he has to figure things out on his own because death is just an easy way of running away from your current problems. It's cowardly and so cruel as well to the people who care for you. The ones that have to burden your absence are the ones that you love the most. It will be insensitive. But by persevering through the toughest of times in life, he is able to find a happy ending even though it might have required him to run through a treacherous maze. And in the case of Shoya, the happy ending is freeing himself from the huge barrier that he had set upon himself, his crippling anxiety and depression. By trying to reconcile with Shoko and meeting new friends, having a fresh start by not just leaving behind his past but also resolving it at the same time. Trying to accept that huge flaw that he has within him and embracing it instead of trying to run away from it. Because the majority of the time you won't be able to get rid of it, and it will be unnatural to do so because one's core essence is defined by the good and bad that they have. Shoko has trouble gaining more respect for herself for a very large part of the film. Gaining a good relationship with Shoya doesn't change anything, and it is only until Shoya tries to risk his life to prevent her from killing herself when she realizes how wrong keeping herself in such a low self-esteem is. Because previously she had thought that it was a way to stop others from getting her hurt. No one would ever care if I die, I would only make things worse by staying alive. I should just kill myself. But for a large portion of this movie, she genuinely believes as though her life is worthless and that no one cares for her, witnessing the amazingly bittersweet scene at the end when she begins to realize that her life is cared for while at the same time mourning Shoya's death left me speechless. And so by the end of the film, both Shoya and Shoka had finally conquered and accepted the flaws within them, their inner trauma that had kept them restrained and behind the rest of the world for so long. For Shoko, she realized that her life was worth more, and well, in the case of Shoya, after the constant moral help from his mother, Shoko, his little sister, and so many other people, he is finally healed from his depression, and in turn, for the first time ever, he realizes life. Thank you so much for all of the support on my channel so far, it truly does mean a lot to me. If you want to support me on my journey, please consider liking and subscribing, they're both free and you can unsubscribe anytime you want if you don't end up enjoying my content. My goal is to hit 100 subscribers by the end of this year. It's very ambitious, but I hope we will be able to accomplish it. Otherwise, I hope to see you all soon. Peace.